She sat alone at the cafe, a warm cup of tea in her hands, staring out the window. The hustle and bustle of the world seemed far away, but her mind was racing. Thelma had just turned 65. She had retired only 3 months ago, and something unexpected had happened. Her phone had stopped ringing. The endless invitations, the friendly check-ins, even the group chats, all had gone silent. At first she felt lost, forgotten, but as she sat there, something shifted. She began to ask herself a question she had never dared to consider. Do I even need all of them? Today we'll explore Thelma's reality and the surprising truth she discovered about life after retirement. A truth that might just change the way you see your own relationships forever. Before we begin, if you treasure timeless wisdom and practical advice for living your best life, we'd love for you to like this video and subscribe to our channel, Timeless Echoes of Elders. Your support allows us to reach more hearts and minds with meaningful messages that truly resonate. If something in this video speaks to you, please share your thoughts in the comments. We really do value your voice. And if you know someone who could use a gentle reminder that wisdom and love are always within reach, share this video with them. Together we can illuminate the path to understanding, one video at a time. Retirement, a word that sparks so many emotions: freedom, uncertainty, excitement, even fear. But what if I told you that this stage of life isn't about holding on to everyone around you? It's about letting go. Letting go of what no longer serves you, starting with the idea that you need friends to be happy. Today, we're diving deep into why fewer friends can lead to greater peace, and how embracing solitude can unlock the most fulfilling chapter of your life. Before we go any further, ask yourself this: what kind of life do you want after retirement? One where you're constantly trying to keep up with everyone else, or one where you finally focus on what truly matters? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I and the community would like to hear your voices. Picture this: you've spent decades surrounded by colleagues, acquaintances, and friends. Social calendars filled with obligations, birthdays, reunions, and endless small talk. But when retirement comes, something shifts. The phone rings less, invitations dwindle, and suddenly you find yourself with time. Time to think, to reflect, to ask, what do I really want from this life? For many, this transition is uncomfortable, but let me tell you, it's also an opportunity, a chance to shed the weight of unnecessary relationships and rediscover yourself. Think back to your life before retirement. How many times did you say yes to something just to avoid conflict or please others? Let us know in the comments. A simple yes, or too many times will do. If you've ever felt the weight of social obligations pulling you down, hit that like button if you haven't. It's time to lighten that load together. We're taught to value friendships above all else, to keep people close no matter the cost. But here's the truth no one tells you. Not all friendships are meant to last a lifetime. Some friendships serve a purpose for a season, and then they fade. And that's okay. The problem arises when we cling to these connections out of obligation, fear of loneliness, or habit. We fill our lives with people who drain our energy, leaving little room for joy, growth, or peace. Pause for a moment and think about your circle of friends. How many of them energize you versus drain you? Write down one name, just for yourself, and reflect on what they bring to your life. Also, share a word or two to describe what friendships mean to you after retirement. Peace, stress, joy? I'd love to hear your perspective, same as many other seniors in this community. Let us analyze some important aspects of this conversation. The freedom of solitude. Solitude is often misunderstood. It's not loneliness, it's liberation. It's the gift of time to sit with your thoughts, to read that book you've always wanted, to take long walks without answering to anyone. Quality over quantity. One or two meaningful connections can bring far more joy than a dozen shallow ones. It's about depth, not numbers. Energy and emotional space. Think of your energy as a garden. Every friend you keep is like a plant you need to water. When you have fewer plants, you can tend to them better and enjoy the beauty of your garden more. Self-reliance and inner peace. The most fulfilling relationship you'll ever have is the one with yourself. Learning to rely on your own company, to to trust your own instincts. That's where true happiness begins. If you believe solitude can be powerful, type "I choose peace" in the comments. Let's embrace this new chapter together. If you feel ready to reclaim your energy, share this video with someone who needs it too. Let's inspire each other. Let me tell you about Mary. She was 67 when she retired, surrounded by friends she'd known for decades. But every interaction felt like a chore. One day, she made the brave decision to step back. She stopped forcing conversations, stopped saying yes when she wanted to say no. And what happened? She discovered painting, joined a community class, and found a new friend who shared her passion for art. Mary's life became richer, not because she held on, but because she let go. Now, take a moment to reflect. Who in your life truly adds value? Who lifts you up? And who, if you're honest, feels like a weight you're carrying? Close your eyes for a moment. Picture yourself 5 years from now. Do you see a life filled with peace, clarity, and purpose? Or do you see yourself tangled in obligations, chasing friendships that no longer serve you? The choice is yours. Some of you might be thinking, but isn't it lonely without friends? That's a fair question, and I want to take a moment to address it. Loneliness is a very real fear for many of us, especially as we age. After all, we've been told that staying connected is the key to happiness. So the idea of stepping back from friendships might sound unsettling at first. But here's the thing. Loneliness and solitude are not the same. Loneliness is a feeling of being disconnected, of craving companionship and not having it. It's painful, and it's rooted in a sense of lack. But solitude? Solitude is entirely different. Solitude is a choice. It's a gift you give yourself, a chance to be fully present with your own thoughts, your own passions, your own peace. Loneliness often arises when we look outward for validation, when we rely on others to make us feel whole. It's that feeling of emptiness when the phone doesn't ring, when the invitations stop coming, or when we sit in a room full of people and still feel invisible. Have you ever felt that way? But solitude is the opposite. It's not about what's missing, it's about what's already within you. It's about creating space to reconnect with yourself, to rediscover who you are without the noise of the world around you. Let me share a story. There was a man named Victor. He retired at 68 and found himself alone in a quiet house. At first, the silence was unbearable. He felt lonely, restless, and even questioned his purpose. But one day, he decided to embrace the quiet. He began taking long walks in the morning, listening to the sound of the birds and the wind in the trees. He picked up his old paintbrush and started painting again, something he hadn't done since he was a young man. Within weeks, Victor's loneliness began to fade. He didn't need constant social interaction to feel alive. He found joy in his own company, in his own passions. He discovered that solitude wasn't something to fear, it was something to cherish. And now he calls those quiet mornings his golden hours. So how do you move from loneliness to solitude? It starts with small steps. Begin by creating rituals for yourself, little moments that bring you joy. Maybe it's your morning coffee enjoyed on the porch, listening to the birds. Maybe it's starting that garden you always dreamed of. Or maybe it's simply sitting in a quiet room, journaling your thoughts. The key is to shift your perspective. Instead of seeing solitude as being alone, see it as being with yourself. And isn't that the most important relationship of all? Now, this doesn't mean you should cut off all connections. Meaningful relationships are still valuable. But it's about finding balance. It's about recognizing that your happiness doesn't depend on anyone else. It's about learning to fill your own cup first, so when you do connect with others, it's from a place of strength, not need. Think of solitude as a wellspring. The more time you spend nurturing yourself, the more you have to give to others. Not out of obligation, but out of abundance. Throughout history, many wise souls have celebrated the power of solitude. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." And Henry David Thoreau, who famously spent years in solitude by Walden Pond, wrote, "I never found the companion that was so companionable as solitude." These are reminders that solitude isn't a void, it's a sanctuary. It's a place where you can hear your own voice, where you can dream, create, and simply be. So if you're afraid of loneliness, I want you to know this. It's okay to feel that way. But I invite you to take a step back and see solitude not as something to fear, but as something to embrace. Start small. Take 1 hour a day to just be with yourself. And notice how it feels. You might be surprised at the peace and clarity it brings. Remember, you're never truly alone when you're connected to your own heart and mind. Solitude isn't a sign of emptiness. It's a sign of wholeness. Start small. Take a step back from one draining relationship. Spend that time on something you love, a hobby, a passion, or simply sitting in the quiet of your own company. You'll be amazed at the difference it makes. Think about Mary's story. Do you see yourself in her shoes? If you could let go of one draining obligation, what would it be? Have you had a moment where stepping back gave you peace? Share it below. I tell you, we'd love to hear your wisdom. Retirement isn't about losing. It's about gaining. Gaining time, gaining freedom, and most importantly, gaining yourself. Remember, you don't need a room full of people to live a full life. You need peace, purpose, and the courage to embrace this beautiful chapter on your own terms. And trust me, you have everything you need within you. Let's pause for a moment and reflect on a question we rarely ask ourselves. Why do we value friendships the way we do? Is it because they truly bring us joy? Or is it because society has taught us to measure our worth by the number of people around us? From an early age, we're conditioned to believe that having many friends is a sign of success. Think about it. Birthday parties with long guest lists, social gatherings filled with faces we barely know, even the rise of social media, where the number of likes and followers has become a badge of honor. But what society rarely tells us is this: more isn't always better. In fact, chasing these expectations often leads to shallow connections. We sacrifice depth for quantity, spreading ourselves thin, leaving little room for meaningful bonds, or more importantly, time for ourselves. Now let's talk about self-reliance, an often overlooked but invaluable skill, especially in retirement. When we're self-reliant, we no longer look outward for validation or happiness. We find it within. This doesn't mean isolating ourselves completely. It means cultivating a sense of inner peace so profound that we're no longer afraid of being alone. It's about becoming your own source of strength, your own best friend. To be real with you, when you rely on yourself, you gain freedom. Freedom from the fear of losing others, freedom from the pressure to keep up appearances, and freedom to live authentically. And isn't that what retirement should be about? Many great thinkers and elders have spoken about the power of solitude and self-reliance. One of them was the American transcendentalist philosopher Henry David Thoreau. I already talked about him before. You may know him for his time spent in solitude at Walden Pond. Thoreau once said, "I never found a companion that was so companionable as solitude." Imagine that, a man who found more joy and clarity in his own thoughts than in the company of others. Another wise American thinker, Ralph Waldo Emerson, taught us the value of self-reliance. He said, "Nothing can bring you peace but yourself." Emerson understood that true fulfillment comes from within, not from the approval of others or the distractions of the outside world. But you don't have to be a philosopher to embrace these ideas. Everyday retirees like you and me can find wisdom in solitude. Imagine waking up each day without the need to impress anyone, without the weight of expectations. Imagine sitting quietly with a cup of coffee, listening to the birds, and feeling completely at peace with yourself. That's the power of inner calm. Here's something to think about. If you could let go of society's expectations, if you could truly embrace solitude and self-reliance, how would your life change? What would you do with the freedom that comes from no longer seeking validation from others? Solitude isn't about shutting the world out. It's about opening yourself up to the beauty within. It's about finding joy in simplicity, clarity in quiet, and strength in yourself. If this message touched you today, leave a heart emoji in the comments to let us know. Your presence here is already a step toward a freer, more fulfilling life. What's one piece of wisdom you've learned about friendships or freedom in retirement? You can share it below. We're building a community of timeless wisdom together. You never know the impact you might have on someone, somewhere around the world. Subscribe for daily reflections like this, and let's walk this journey of peace and purpose side by side. Don't forget to leave a comment. Your stories, thoughts, and wisdom are part of what makes this community so special. If this video has resonated with you, which I know it must have, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to Timeless Echoes of Elders. Your support helps us continue creating content that inspires and uplifts. From the bottom of my heart, I urge you to reflect on what we have talked about here today. Share it and join me for more timeless wisdom. Until next time, take care of your heart, your mind, and your soul.